Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be dialing in from around the world. Thank you all for joining and spending time with us for today's webinar, Top 10 Trends in Capital Markets 2022. Technology Tackles Risks, Products, and Procedures, presented by Aite Novarica Group. I'm Caitlin Labby, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We'll be starting the webinar shortly, but first, let me just cover a few quick housekeeping items. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions using the questions feature located in the GoToWebinar toolbar to the right of your screen. Also, today's webinar will be recorded, and a link to view the recording on demand will be available after the session for current clients of our capital markets practice. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Gavin Littlegill is Aite Novarica Group's Head of Securities and Investments, collaborating with both the capital markets and wealth management practices to deliver exceptional products and services. Gavin has applied his analyst experiences and expertise to the fintech market for the past 15 years, and he has a passion for working with firms to define and execute business, product, marketing, and distribution strategies. I'll turn the mic over now to Gavin for further introductions and to dive into today's content. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy today's webinar.
Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. It's an honor to be kicking off the Capital Markets Top 10 Trends of 2022 with my colleagues Vinod, Scott, and Paul. Let me just pull up that top 10 list while I kick things off. You know, what's interesting about this list is when I look at it, I'm struck by the level of change and innovation that's reflected throughout these trends. When I think about it's just roughly 2 years ago today that COVID was just starting to rear its head. You know, if you had told me back then that 2 years later we'd still be experiencing significant disruption, I'm not sure I would have believed you. But if you then told me that not only would we experience 2 years of pandemic and yet would still experience an acceleration of technology, product, and business innovation, I'd have said there's absolutely no way that the industry could actually survive that process. And yet that's exactly what we've seen. So let's talk about what's driving the top 10 for 2022. When I look at it, I really see four major drivers here, right? There's regulation, product innovation, systemic or environmental changes, and technology. And they're all coming together to largely disrupt your business. I've got a couple of examples that are just sitting around this, but obviously there's dozens, in some cases, hundreds of different examples of regulation, technology, systemic issues, and product innovations that are happening. If we take each of these in turn, if you start with regulation, you know, what you see there is not just country-specific regulation, but market-specific regulation, and it's that slow drip. And it's one thing when you've got a regulation here and a regulation there, but you're all operating global businesses. And when you aggregate all of those regulatory changes that are happening at the market and country level, it becomes a real torrent, just a wall of water that's coming at you that you've got to manage. You think about product innovation. You think about crypto. You think about private markets, direct indexing, right? The list goes on. You think about systemic or the broader environmental changes to the ecosystem that you operate in, right? Things that are extending well beyond just the current COVID-19. Things like cybersecurity, things like T+1 or industry initiatives. And finally, technology, which really falls into sort of two buckets in my mind. I think about it as horizontal technology like cloud, RPA, and AI that people are looking to increasingly integrate into the business processes. And then I think about enabling products and services, right? So things like fixed income portfolio trading, and that certainly is impacting the technology evolution of the fixed income marketplaces.